The world stands at a crossroads, a rare moment in history where the balance of power is shifting not by war alone, but by economics, technology, and the invisible tides of influence. At the heart of this transformation lies a triangle: the United States, China, and Europe, three great powers locked in a complex web of rivalry, dependency, and strategic realignment. For decades, the post-Cold War world was defined by American dominance. Washington dictated the global order through its unmatched military reach, economic influence, and cultural power. But that era is fading. The 21st century is no longer defined by a single superpower. It is being rewritten by competing visions of the future. Let us start with the United States, a nation that once viewed itself as the undisputed leader of the free world. Today, America's dominance is being challenged on every front. Militarily, it still reigns supreme, with alliances stretching from NATO to the Pacific. But economically, the challenge from China grows by the day. Technologically, the race for artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and microchips has become the new arms race of our time. Meanwhile, inside the US, domestic polarization has weakened the country's global image. The political divide between the right and the left has eroded consensus on foreign policy. For allies, America feels less predictable. For rivals, it feels more vulnerable. Across the Pacific, Beijing sees opportunity. China's rise is not an accident. It is the result of decades of careful planning, state-led capitalism, and a deep understanding of how power works in the modern world. Under Xi Jinping, China has moved beyond being the world's factory. It now aims to be the architect of a new order. The Belt and Road Initiative, spanning over 150 countries, is not merely an infrastructure project. It's a geopolitical blueprint designed to expand Chinese influence through debt, trade, and dependency. China's economic footprint stretches from Africa's ports to Europe's railways, from Southeast Asia's factories to Latin America's mines. Every investment, every loan, every trade agreement is a thread in Beijing's global web, but power breeds resistance. The United States has responded with tariffs, export bans, and alliances such as AUKUS and the Quad, designed to encircle China militarily and technologically. Washington's goal is clear: contain China's rise without triggering a direct war. Yet, this containment strategy has its limits. Many nations, from India to Brazil, from Saudi Arabia to Indonesia, refuse to pick sides. They are pursuing what analysts now call strategic autonomy, a middle path that allows them to benefit from both powers without being dominated by either. And this brings us to Europe, the third corner of the Great Triangle. For decades, Europe relied on the US for security and on Russia for energy, while trading heavily with China for growth. But after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that balance shattered. Suddenly, Europe was forced to confront its vulnerabilities: dependence on external powers, slow decision-making, and the lack of a unified defense policy. Under leaders like Emmanuel Macron and Ursula von der Leyen, the European Union has begun speaking the language of power once again. Phrases like strategic sovereignty and economic security have become common in Brussels. The EU is trying to build its own path, not merely as America as junior partner or China as marketplace, but as an independent pole in the global system. Still, the reality is complex. Europe remains internally divided. Eastern members prioritize defense against Russia. Western powers focus on economic competition with China. And southern nations, burdened by debt and migration pressures, look inward rather than outward. So while Europe dreams of autonomy, it remains deeply entangled in both Washington's security umbrella and Beijing's economic orbit. This interdependence, military, economic, and technological, defines the new world order. No longer a bipolar system like the Cold War, but a multiplex world where influence is distributed across overlapping networks rather than fixed alliances. To understand the stakes, we need to look at three dimensions of this emerging triangle: military, economic, and technological power. Militarily, the United States remains unmatched. Its global network of bases, advanced weapons systems, and navy dominate the seas. China, however, has been rapidly modernizing, expanding its naval power, missile systems, and cyber capabilities at unprecedented speed. According to defense reports, China now possesses the world's largest navy by number of ships, and its military-industrial base is outproducing the West in drones, missiles, and munitions. Europe, in contrast, is lagging behind. Despite growing defense budgets, coordination remains weak. Even after the war in Ukraine reignited talk of a European army, progress is slow. Most European militaries still rely heavily on US intelligence, logistics, and nuclear deterrence. Economically, the dynamics are shifting even faster. The US and China are decoupling, each building parallel systems of trade, finance, and technology. Semiconductors, energy supply chains, and rare earth minerals have become the new geopolitical battlegrounds. Europe, once dependent on global trade flows, now finds itself forced to choose between open markets and national security. China's economic slowdown in recent years, caused by demographic decline and property market troubles, has not stopped its ambition. Instead, Beijing is focusing on technological self-sufficiency, investing billions in AI, renewable energy, and biotech to reduce dependence on the West. Meanwhile, Washington is reshoring industries through the Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS Act, funneling hundreds of billions of dollars into domestic manufacturing. It is a new kind of economic nationalism, one that echoes across both sides of the Atlantic. And yet, despite the rivalry, all three powers remain linked. China still relies on Western markets. The US still depends on Chinese manufacturing. Europe still trades heavily with both. This paradox, a competition within interdependence, is what makes this era so volatile. The technological front is where the real contest for the future lies. Artificial intelligence, 5G networks, semiconductors, and quantum computing, these are the tools of modern supremacy. Whoever controls them will shape not only global trade, but the very structure of human societies. The US leads in innovation and software. China leads in implementation and scale. Europe, despite its scientific excellence, struggles to convert innovation into global power. The digital Cold War is already underway. Washington is building chip alliances with Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands. Beijing is countering with state subsidies and domestic alternatives. And Europe, once again, finds itself caught in the middle, balancing openness with protection. But behind these power plays lies a deeper philosophical divide. The United States envisions a world of liberal democracy and open markets, though increasingly guarded by tariffs and sanctions. China promotes a model of state-led stability and controlled capitalism. Europe advocates for multilateralism, sustainability, and rule-based order-wide deals that are harder to maintain in a fragmented world. In many ways, the New World Order is not being built by treaties or wars, but by technological ecosystems, who builds the networks, who sets the standards, and who controls the data. This is the silent battlefield of the 21st century. As we look ahead, three major fault lines could determine the fate of this triangle. First, the Taiwan Strait, a flashpoint where US and Chinese interests collide directly. Second, Ukraine and Eastern Europe, where Russia's aggression continues to test NATO unity. And third, the Global South, where both China and the West are competing for influence through infrastructure, loans, and digital access. Each of these fronts reveals the same truth. Power today is not absolute, it's negotiated, networked, and contested in every domain. In the coming decade, the triangle may not collapse into open conflict, but it will harden into spheres of influence. The US and its allies will consolidate in the Atlantic and Indo-Pacific. China will deepen ties with Asia, Africa, and parts of Latin America. Europe will try and struggle to remain strategically independent. But the greatest danger may not be war itself. It is the gradual normalization of rivalry, the slow erosion of global cooperation on issues that transcend borders, climate change, AI ethics, pandemics, and cybersecurity. If the triangle of power becomes too rigid, the world could enter a new kind of Cold War, not of ideology, but of systems and values. In the end, this is the paradox of our age. Never before have nations been so interconnected, and yet so distrustful. Never before has technology united humanity while dividing its powers. The Great Power Triangle is not just a struggle for dominance. It's a struggle for the future of globalization itself. Because whoever defines the rules of this emerging world defines the next century.